The birthstone for this month, June, is pearl. The Nourishment Project nourishes a love of learning to cultivate a discerning mind. Discernment. A picture that embodies that concept of discernment is. I've had fun doing this one. It's from a rather venerated book, though. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Pearls are synonymous with discernment. So, a very warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us for this story, Adornment, in praise of mollusks. The Nourishment Project is about joyous curiosity and being part of something much larger than ourselves. Here are some of the references that inform this presentation. Discernment to know value. So our story begins in the early 20th century with Mr. Morton Plant. On July 27, 1917, the Real Estate Record and Guide reported that, and I'm quoting, the Morton F. Plant dwelling at the southeast corner of Fifth Avenue and 52nd Street had been sold for $100 and other valuable considerations. His house, or rather mansion of the Gilded Age, needs to be put into context. So in 1914, 10 months after his first wife's death, 61-year-old Mr. Morton married 31-year-old May Caldwell Manwaring. She was known as Maisie. So Plant was so head over heels in love with the much married Maisie that he paid her first husband, Selden Manwaring, $8 million for an uncontested divorce. Call it a bride gift. So in 1916, while setting her eyes on a display of a double strand pearl necklace in a shop window, Maisie fell in love. It just happened to be the most expensive pearl necklace in the world at that time, valued at over $1 million. And timing really is everything. It happened that the owners, the company Cartier, was looking for a grand building that could both be a beacon for the city's elite and be on par with the store's flagship in Paris. By 1912, Pierre Cartier had established himself among the elite of New York through the buying and selling of some of the world's most awe-inspiring gems, including the 45.52 carat Hope diamond, the one referred to in the movie Titanic. Mr. Morton loved his wife. What May wanted, May got, and she was acquisitive. So Mr. Morton Plant was a railroad tycoon, but did not have $1 million in cash. So he offered to do a swap. So remember how that article had stated Morton offered to trade the necklace for his mansion. That's what he was referring to when he said sold for $100 and other valuable consideration. The other valuable consideration was a double strand of natural, luminous South Sea pearl necklace, shown in this painting, resting its burden of light on the pearly beauty that is Maisie. The smaller strand consisted of 55 pearls and the larger 73. So the 128 pearls that made up the necklace had taken years to assemble, each one having been collected by hand by divers, and the pearls were then matched in color and size to create perfectly graduated strands. So, as part of the deal, Pierre agreed that he would not alter the exterior of the building in any way. Cultured pearls had not yet reached the commercial markets in New York, and so the natural pearls were a symbol of wealth and status among New York's social elite. This turned out to be a very shrewd investment for Cartier because a few years later, due to the proliferation of cultured pearls, sales dropped markedly not long after the plants had completed the 1917 trade of the mansion for the pearls. And this was due to the introduction of cultured pearls by Kokichi Mikimoto. I'm sure we've all heard of Mikimoto pearls. When in the 1960s, After parts of her estate were on the market, the same aforementioned pearls that had been traded for $1 million sold for a paltry $181,000. So I'm betting the Cartier building in New York is worth much more than $1 million today. Ironically, that painting we saw of Maisie hangs in the store itself. Another painting of besotted pearl lovers, the emperors Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb visiting two holy men. You can pick out the royalty by the pearl necklaces adorning them. Not just the Mughals, Indian royalty has had a long, passionate history with this natural gemstone. Be it a triple strand rarity from the eastern part of India, this is a queen, Rani from the Kuch Bihar. Her daughter is the aforementioned beauty Gayatri Devi. I thought the mother surpassed her. Or what is known as the Sat Lara, Sat means seven, so it's seven strands, draping the Rani from the western states of Baroda in Gujarat. Do remember, these are natural pearls, each a miracle of nature, carefully matched by color and shape and treasured for generations. The Indian men, the proverbial peacocks, were slightly more showy with their love of this stone. Across the generations, these little ones are not proverbially borrowing their mother's pearls, I assure you. The strands of pearls, like the boys, will grow with the years. I must say, I get flummoxed. Why do people have such unhappy resting faces, especially Indians like this? It's ridiculous. Smile. So, the mother of pearl, the inner iridescence of the mollusks, lends resplendence to utensils and chests, treasures themselves. Look at the work. And similar to the Ottomans, pearl carpets were not unknown in India. The masterpiece known as the Pearl Carpet of Baroda, Baroda again is in Gujarat in India, currently on display in Doha, Qatar. Pearl carpets have historical accounts, and a legendary one from the 6th, 7th century is the one belonging to the Sasanian, which is Persian king Khusrau II. That extraordinarily large carpet was made of wool, silk, gold, and silver, and elaborately decorated with a multitude of colored gemstones and pearls. The motifs incorporated in that carpet were springtime scenes such as birds in flight, flowers in full bloom, ripe fruits, and broad green meadows believed to have been designed to solid emeralds. It is said that King Khusrau II strolled along this seemingly endless jeweled carpet during the winter to savor its many springtime scenes, hence the name winter carpet. The one that we are currently viewing was commissioned around 1865 by the Gaikwad Kande Rao, the Maharaj of Baroda, a Hindu king, one of the richest men of his time. He had felt compelled to make an offering to the tomb of the late prophet. So, pearls, including colored beads and diamonds. He believed a carpet was a suitable gift as he wanted to cover the tomb in a manner reminiscent of the tomb of the Mughal Empress Mumtaz Mahal, she of the Taj Mahal. Her carpet that covered her tomb befitted the legendary beauty, but that carpet, however, no longer exists. Her husband, Shah Jahan, was a lover of pearls as well. Here he is in the folio, Shah Jahan on a terrace holding a pendant set with his portrait. It's a selfie. He's looking at himself. As mentioned before, the Mughal emperors placed a great emphasis on pearls. Just like the other precious gems, the largest and most lustrous pearls were valued. The longest strands of pearls were reserved for the emperor and his sons. Here, Shah Jahan is draped in pearl necklaces that stretch down to his waist. This honor was reserved for the most highly ranked members of the royal family. So, India has a historical love of pearls, and pearls were used as medicine as well. Pearls, powdered, were used to treat ailments, including eye problems. Astrology is rampant in India even today. So, marriages, business openings, all consult astrologers. And you will often see both men and women in India wearing big stones on multiple fingers. And it's not really a fashion statement, it's more spiritual medicine to counter and appease the effects of the planet. So, for example, they will wear yellow sapphire on their first finger to appease Jupiter or give it more power, blue sapphire for Saturn, although blue sapphires are treated with very care, they're afraid of that stone, pearls to cool the effects of the planet Mars. And for those who can't afford pearls, moonstone is the cheaper alternative. Well, throughout history, India has been a luxury trading partner. So, a periplus, also known as periplus, is a manuscript document that lists the ports and the coastal landmarks that the captain of a vessel could expect to find along a shore. This one is from the mid first century CE, which is current era, and it is a Greco Roman periplus describing the navigation and trading opportunities from Roman Egyptian ports along the coast of the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, and the Indian Ocean. The Red Sea areas were some of the most successful pearl fisheries of antiquities, as were the coastal areas of southern India, the Deccans. So Deccan is an anglicized pronunciation of the Indian word for south, Duckin or Dakshin. So that's how the word Deccan comes. Commercial trade between India and Italy in the first century CE, so it's been around for a long time, is evidenced by this ivory statuette discovered in the ruins of Pompeii, which was destroyed in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, current era. Mistakenly attributed to the Hindu goddess of beauty and wealth, Lakshmi, we now believe, because of the iconography, her nakedness, that figure is most likely that of a Yakshi, which is a female tree spirit that represents fertility. Once Rome had captured Egypt, the wealth of the Nile allowed Roman citizens to indulge in conspicuous consumption. So luxury goods traded from the exotic Far East, spices like spices and silk, gemstones, and definitely, especially pearls. Again from Pompeii, this painting of Venus, the Roman Aphrodite, with the obtrusive pearl earrings. Here are similar designs unearthed from the archaeological site Oplontis in Naples. It rattles with every movement of the face, announcing the wealth of the owner. And these are all natural pearls from antiquities. And to have matching ones of this size is beyond a miracle. This is the Severin Tondo. So, a tondo, from the word rotondo, is a circular painting or relief carving. This one is also known as the Berlin Tondo and depicts the Roman Emperor Septimius Severus with his family, wife, and two children. So, Septimius Severus was Rome's first African ruler from the area of Leptis Magna, which is now Libya. So, it's all North African. And this really helps put in context Shakespeare's play Othello, makes it more realistic, doesn't it? So, as can be seen on the bottom left, one of the children's faces is removed. That concept is called damnatio memoriae, which is effectively a modern Latin phrase meaning condemnation of memory. It indicates that that person is to be excluded from official accounts. Examples include removal of names from inscriptions and documents, even large scale rewriting of history. For our story of pearls, let's focus on the wife with her unbelievable, and I stress unbelievable, large jewelry. Staying in Africa, specifically North Africa, Egypt, after the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, this is before current era, Egypt became part of the Roman Empire, and realistic paintings of people faces on wooden panels, known as mummy portraits, became the new trend for burials. These mummy portraits became very popular in the first to third century CE in Egypt. And so there, people still mummified human bodies as they had always done, burying them in sealed tombs, and now they added these mummy portraits. So the two traditions were fused, the old and the new. What's fascinating to me, because I love nature, is that for these mummy portraits, 70% of them used imported lime tree wood. It is a very high quality wood and excellent for carving. And so that they imported these woods shows the value of these mummy portraits. Mummies were kept in Egyptian homes. Many Egyptians kept the bodies of their ancestors in costly chambers and gazed face to face upon those who died many generations before their own birth. The portraits were of an actual person depicted living and breathing. So while we have photos of our grandparents at home, they simply had their actual grandparents there. We bring flowers to our loved ones' tombs, they share meals with them. And scribbled caricatures left by unruly children on their grandparents' mummied feet illustrated that the family lived near the mummies. For our story, please look at the pearl earrings of the woman on the left and the pearl jewelry of these two women as well. Pearls were signs of wealth, discretion. Go to eternity with them. Many mummy portraits, I just took two, include them. And I'll share a very funny and but rather practical observation made recently by a female archaeologist from the I heard about it from the OI, a wonderful collaborator, a delight to work with them. The archaeologist happens to love jewelry in real life, and she was curious, how did they find such huge, rare, natural pearls? You know what? Did they all just find perfect pearls laying about, matched perfectly, same size? Makes sense, doesn't it? They're not real. Most probably they're opaline beads made to look like pearls. And it's so universal because even recently, Coco Chanel mixed fakes with real ones. I love that the archaeologists brought a real life passion and perspective to history. Many men hadn't made that obvious connection. All those huge pearls that show up in the mummy portraits, it's simply not possible. Plus, there were sumptuary laws that forbid too much consumption of luxury goods, which was a cunning way of leaving it only for the ultra wealthy. So now in Basilica San Vitale, Ravenna, Italy, magnificent Byzantine glass mosaics. But that is not our interest today, is it? It is, as always, pearls. Here is Emperor Justinian with his pearls, his wife Theodora with her pearls. And remember, garnet was the color of Christ. Their being depicted in pearls isn't accidental. And all these pearls throughout history, many of them were traded from India. So ninth century record show that ships, even from the Tang dynasty, frequently visited major Kerala ports such as Kollam for spices, for ginger, for pepper, for cardamom. So Indian trade went east and west. These are the times of the zenith of Chola dynasty, which is the 10th, 11th century. And Raja Raja Chola's influence covered the Bay of Bengal, Burma, Thailand, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Malaysia, Sumatra, and Java. It was a huge influence. The lucrative pearl banks of the Gulf of Mannar became a principal source of revenue for the Chola kingdom. The Gulf of Mannar pearl fishery on the Indian side was under the total control of the Chola kings from around 10th century CE to about 13th century CE. And during this period, the Chola kings made use of not only the Hindu pearl divers, but also Arab divers from the Persian Gulf, as well as Indian Moors. Moors were the term for Muslims who were descendant of the Arab settlers. This allowed for exploitation of pearl resources on either side of the Gulf of Mannar. The lucrative pearl trades contributed to the patronage of beauty, these Chola bronzes, so admired even by contemporary artists like Rodin. So I just wanted to put in context, where did they get all these money to have these things that we often so coo over? You need money for all of this. Wealth matters. These areas of the Gulf of Mannar are what's being alluded to in the French opera, The Pearl Fishers. And here are the real pearl fishers. Many of them become deaf from diving into those cold depths. So they probably wouldn't be able to hear the music of the opera. And just as well, because they would not recognize the Middle Eastern Oriental musical concoction attributed to these areas of Sri Lanka. But that's okay because the French music is beautiful. The only thing that really confounded me when I saw the production, any of the Pearl Fisher productions, is the very little, practically non existent use of pearls in the costumes. You figure Pearl Fishers would have pearls on. Who knows? Anyway, after the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century CE, the vacuum created in the trans Indian Ocean trade from the ports in the Red Sea, the Arabian coast, the Persian Gulf, all the way to the Indian subcontinent was effectively taken over by the Arab traders beginning from the 7th century and continued all the way until the arrival of the Portuguese in the early 16th century. So the medallion on the left depicts the Samuthiri. The anglicized pronunciation of that is the Zamorin, welcoming Vasco da Gama. So the Samuthiri is painted on the right, and he's massively wealthy and should have rethought such an alliance because most of Vasco da Gama's crew were criminals for religious and political reasons. And please note that the story is being summarized without all the necessary nuances, but the gist is applicable. The Portuguese were welcomed to fight the Deccan sultanates, mainly Muslims, but not all. The origins weren't all Muslims. Some of them were Brahmins also and Hindus. So the South Indian Deccan sultanates did not like the North Indian Muslim rulers, the Mughals. But Deccan art is fascinating. The rolling hills, the verdant landscape of South India allowed the artists flights of fancies that the northern Mughal artists couldn't begin to investigate because all that Delhi is mainly flatlands. And for access to the dominance of some Arab, so read Muslim pearl fisheries, some in the south converted to Islam, but most didn't. Because at the end of a grueling fishing day, fishermen wanted to relax and drink toddy, arak, which is alcohol from the palms. So Islam forbade alcohol. But Allah, unfortunately, couldn't compete with alcohol for the loyalty of these fishermen. But however, soon, due to the threat of livelihood and religious tribalism, the Portuguese were welcomed for protection, which was horrifically short sighted, for the Portuguese soon demanded mass conversion for this protection, along with great tributes. They call it tributes, it's effectively tax and coercion. Fresh from the lessons of the Inquisitions in Europe that expelled Jews and Muslims in Spain, Portugal's distrust of the Moors, which are Muslims, and the fervor of devotion brought Jesuits like Saint Francis Xavier. And I was stunned by his conviction when he was in India. He translated the catechisms to the native tongue and held mass conversions. Many of these conversions were coerced in ways we would find horrific and call atrocities. But with the backdrop of the pearl fisheries, parts of the Western India became Catholic. So the term Bombay, from the Portuguese Bom Bahia, which means a good bay, just like you find Bom Jesus everywhere in Goa, part of India. But isn't it stupefying that despite India's independence from the British Empire in 1947, Goa had remained a Portuguese colony until 1961. It was reclaimed over one day by the Indian Armed Forces. And but I was astounded. How is this possible? After India became independent, they were still a part of a colony on that subcontinent for almost 14 years after independence. And so Portuguese held one of the most lucrative regions for quite a long time. And it is through Catholic Portugal that South India, places like Kerala and Goa, has a thriving Christian population. And it's a very welcome community. How appropriate that the gateway to this conversion, the pearl, which is what brought on all this, is represented in the oyster in the bottom of this object. The pearl in that oyster is Christianity itself. So the Dutch first landed, so from the Portuguese, we're now moving to the Dutch. They first landed in Sri Lanka in 1602. The king of Kandy in Sri Lanka welcomed the arrival of the Dutch and supported setting up a Dutch fort for assistance against the Portuguese because by that time, the persecution of the local population by the Portuguese was becoming unbearable. The conversions were, uh, the word isn't amazing. The Dutch, with the assistance of the Sinhalese Sri Lankan army, began ousting the Portuguese from their forts one after another. The last Portuguese fort fell to the Dutch was the Hafna fort in 1658. So they were around for 50 years before they were able to get out all the Portuguese from there. The man depicted in this painting was in charge of the Dutch trading posts in Hyderabad. I mean, look at him, living it up in opulence that is proverbial Orient. Because honestly speaking, his home in the Netherlands wouldn't have been a bastion of color and merriment, would it have been? Not during those times. The Dutch, with their sturdy, muted palate and practicality, differ greatly from the resplendence that is India. And so, from the Portuguese, the pearl fisheries fell under Dutch control. And that influence of India on Netherlands is evident in this painting of an European girl wearing an exotic dress, an oriental turban, and what was thought to be a very large pearl as a earring. Take a look at it. Do you really think that's a pearl? So I always smile thinking this rivals the unbelievableness of the pearls in the mummy portraits. But Vermeer again, woman with a pearl necklace. Where did the influx of pearls to the Netherlands come from? It wasn't by their waters, but now you can guess. So interesting events are taking place in Europe towards the end of the 18th century. Napoleon Bonaparte captures the Netherlands and the Prince of Orange escapes to London, fearing that the French control of the Netherlands might deliver the lucrative possessions in India to the French. The forces from the British East India Company made a quick move and took over all the Dutch possessions in Sri Lanka and southern India in 1796. How very convenient. So from 1796 to 1908, the pearl fisheries of India and Sri Lanka came under British control. And as established earlier, the Muslim royalty loved pearls and often wore them exclusively with emeralds and rubies. Here is the last Muslim ruler, Bahadur Shah II, before the reign of the British Empire began in full glory in India. Coincidentally, the English liked pearls as well. Guess who in particular? Our good friend Lizzie. She was acquisitive beyond belief. So Elizabeth also acquired the famous Hanoverian pearls, which had originally been given by Catherine de' Medici upon her marriage. It had been given to Catherine de' Medici upon her marriage to King Henry of France, I think in around like mid 1500s sometime. So Catherine had passed the pearls to her Catholic daughter-in-law, Mary Stuart, Queen of Scots. So Queen Elizabeth saw her half-sister Mary as a threat to her sovereignty. In 1567 or 68, around that time, this English queen had the Catholic Mary beheaded, and afterwards, Elizabeth bought the Hanoverian pearls at her own price and incorporated them into her crown jewels. She liked pearls. What she wanted, she got. And here is the very famous Armada portrait celebrating the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588. And look, she's bedecked with pearls. And apparently, when they cleaned these outfits, they had to individually take every pearl out. God. Dress was a key component in the iconography of Queen Elizabeth and was used to contribute to the cult of the Virgin Queen. Pearls have been associated with chastity since the Middle Ages, and it's mainly due to their purity of shape and color. Here, they are used to decorate the queen's bodice and headdress in abundance. And the resemblance of the pearl to the full moon also linked Elizabeth to Diana, that chaste goddess of moon and the hunt. This portrait shows the monarch in a favorite color scheme of black and white, colors frequently adopted by courtiers in homage to their queen. But pearls were treasured by many English monarchs, truly a price above rubies, so to speak. Anne of Denmark, consort to the English King James, James I, I'm going to point now. This diamond studded S on her collar right there was a reference to her mother, Sophia, because I was looking at things like, what is that S for? Not for Shoma. And but look at the pearls on her and her dress, those pearl shaped, the pear shaped pearls. Also, when we leap forward into history, for her coronation in 1902, Queen Alexandra wore 7 strands of pearls, some of which were undoubtedly the Hanoverian pearls that we just spoke of, those that Catherine de' Medici had received and then later given to Mary, Queen of Scots, the Catholic Queen. Queen Alexandra wore a choker. In many pictures, you will see her like that, but she had used to wear them to hide her scars on her neck, but the public didn't know that. And so pearl chokers became a rage in England. But by that time, the British Empire had a whole treasure chest called India to supply that demand. More recently, the Queen Mother and her pearls, current Queen, the future Queen at the recent funeral of Prince Philip. And it's not just the royal courtiers. They all got into the pearl game if they could afford it. So in this case, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, Sir Thomas Gresham, who was the founder of the Royal Exchange, he possessed a famous pearl. And when he was entertaining the Spanish ambassador to dinner, he ground it to powder and drank it in a glass of wine to his sovereign's health. Here's to Queen Elizabeth. He wanted to show Spain what luxury the English were capable of, because during that time, Spanish were in power. They were the one power to beat. What a foolish extravaganza. And he was a poor imitator, but he knew his history, for the one who had actually pulled that stunt more than a millennia prior to him was Cleopatra. To convince the Roman leader Mark Antony that Egypt possessed an affluence that placed it above conquest, Cleopatra wagered that she could give the most expensive banquet ever known. As Pliny the Elder detailed in his 3rd century CE work, Natural History, Cleopatra removed one of her pearl earrings, dropped it in a goblet of vinegar, placed before her, and then drank it. The astonished Anthony declined his dinner, which was the matching pearl, the other earring, and he admitted defeat. So Pliny's anecdote was considered credible in antiquity, but now it's mainly deemed legendary. So Anthony's meal, that one earring, was reportedly given to Rome, where it was cut in half and made into earrings for a statue of Venus in the Pantheon. Cleopatra's previous lover, Julius Caesar, here shown the Ides of March, March 15th, where he's being assassinated, and his Greek kai su teknon, you too, my child. And it's not that et tu Brutus that we've read in Shakespeare. He didn't speak Latin, he spoke Greek. It would have been kai su teknon. So he's saying that to Marcus Junius Brutus. I'm going to point to him. It's this redhead right there with his eyes down. He's trying to avoid the gaze of Julius Caesar. And understandably so, because Brutus was the son of Caesar's favorite mistress, Servilia. Perhaps Brutus's act was more personal, mommy issues than political, because later, eventually, Brutus killed himself. Caesar had given Servilia a massive pear-shaped pearl. Speaking of another famous pear-shaped pearl, actually, in fact, one of the largest perfectly symmetrical pear-shaped pearls in the world, originally found in the Spanish-controlled Panama. It was a gift to Philip II. He gave it to his second wife, Mary Tudor of England. You can see it right over there. Here it is again, through history, in Velázquez's painting of Elizabeth of France. I try to do blow up so that one can see more clearly. In the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte made his older brother king of Spain. Por qué no? Isn't that the thing to do? You become ruler, you appoint people rulers. So Joseph Bonaparte became King Jose I. How sweet. Within 5 years, he was forced to leave the kingdom. And then he just took some of the Spanish crown jewels with him. Why not? including that very large pear-shaped pearl named La Peregrina, the Wanderer, which wanders like a free falcon, and historically it has, as we will continue to find out. In his will, Joseph Bonaparte left the pearl to his nephew, the future Napoleon III of France. And when this Napoleon III was exiled in England, the emperor sold it to James Hamilton. The Hamilton family owned the pearl until 1969, so we've leapt forward, at which point it was sold at auction at Sotheby's in London. Richard Burton purchased the pearl at the Sotheby's auction for $37,000. He gave it to his wife, Elizabeth Taylor, as a Valentine's Day gift during their first marriage. I did a double take when I read that. I realized later they had married each other twice. So it wasn't their first Valentine, it was just their first marriage. On one occasion, the pearl had gone missing in Burton's suite in the Caesar's Palace in Nevada. And it was a very charming anecdote. I'm going to read it to you now. In her book, Elizabeth Taylor, My Love Affair with Jewelry, Taylor writes, I'm going to read now. At one point, I reached down to touch La Peregrina and it wasn't there. I glanced over at Richard and thank God he wasn't looking at me. And I went into the bedroom and threw myself on the bed, buried my head into the pillow, and screamed. Very slowly and very carefully, I retraced all my steps in the bedroom. I took my slippers off, took my socks off, and got down on my hands and knees, looking everywhere for the pearl. Nothing. I thought, oh my God, it's going to be in the living room in front of Richard. What am I going to do? He's going to kill me because he loved the piece. After a few minutes of mental anguish, Taylor looked at their puppies. One of them was apparently chewing on a bone, but nobody gave bones to the puppies. So Taylor continues, I just casually opened the puppy's mouth, and inside his mouth was the most perfect pearl in the world. Thank God it was not scratched. Only them. Taylor commissioned Cartier to redesign the necklace, setting La Peregrina with pearls, diamonds, and rubies. Eventually, it was sold at auction, and the money went towards her commitment to AIDS research. So La Peregrina is wandering somewhere out there and will pop up sooner or later because it is a legend of La Peregrina. But pearls, along with legends, have some charming mythology. One mythology beautifully depicted by the illustrator Edmund Dulac is that shellfish belonging to the family of the Queen of the Conches, purified by contact with the lips of Vishnu, that blue god of Hinduism, and when in contact with the elephants of pure descent, these conches are, or conchs, I think they call it here, are the producers of pearls. I just like the picture. In the non celestial world, pearls are made by marine oysters and freshwater mussels as a natural defense against an irritant, such as a parasite entering their shells or damage to their fragile body. So the difference between an oyster and a mussel is that oysters have a rough, dull, hard shell, and they're often covered in barnacles, while mussels have smooth, purplish black shells that are oblong shaped and have elongated ends. The shell of an oyster is generally oval shaped. So freshwater mussels can produce pearls, as can clams. A quahog clam. So this is not a clam, obviously. This is the pearl that came from a clam. And this is fascinating. Around 2009, Mike Serino, a Massachusetts policeman, ordered seafood stew at his birthday dinner. I couldn't make this up. And when he bit down, he had bitten into something hard. Turns out he had bitten a natural, rare purple gem from a quahog clam, and this natural pearl was the size of a very large pea. Call it pearl a la carte. It eventually sold for about $15,000 or $20,000. So mollusks, invertebrates that include oysters, mussels, etc., are fascinating on their own. I will now read about these pearl producers from that delicious book by M.F.K. Fisher, parts of her essay, love and death among the mollusks. You'll enjoy it, trust me. An oyster leads a dreadful but exciting life. Indeed, his chance to live at all is slim, and if he should survive the arrows of his own outrageous fortune, and the 2 weeks of his carefree youth find a clean, smooth place to fix on, the years afterwards are full of stress, passion, and danger. He, but why make him a he except for clarity? Almost any normal oyster never knows from one year to the next whether he is a he or a she, and may start at any moment after the first year to lay eggs where before he spent his sexual energies in being exceptionally masculine. A little oyster is born in the water. At first, about 5 or 10 hours after he and at least a few 100,000 of his mother's eggs have been fertilized by his potent and unknown sire, he is merely a larva. He is small, but free swimming. He is now called a spat. For about a year, this oyster, our oyster, let's assume he's a male, fertilizes a few 100,000 eggs as best as he can without ever knowing that they swam by or not. Then one day, maternal longings surge between his two valves in his cold guts and gills and all those crinkly fringes. Necessity, that well known mother, makes him into one. He is now a she. God, can that woman write? Ah! So, can you imagine? We eat these biological chameleons, and I eat them. I love them. I think they taste great. Oysters are not only scrumptious, they're actually good for you because they're high in protein, minerals, vitamin B12, and omega 3 fatty acids, at least by themselves, unless you clunk them up with cheese and stuff, then I don't know. So, by themselves, they're low in calories. And so the Roman statesman Cicero is said to have eaten them to improve his eloquence. Reputedly, oysters boost a flagging intellect. For reasons other than intellectual stimulation, Giacomo Casanova, that Venetian adventurer and philanderer, is said to have eaten 50 oysters daily for breakfast. Oysters are reportedly an aphrodisiac. And well, why not? They did adorn the goddess of love, Aphrodite herself, as we saw in that painting from Pompeii. So, oysters produce pearls. They do so by secreting layers of aragonite and conchiolin, the same substance that are in its calcium carbonate shell. So, the mollusks create a material called nacre, commonly known as mother of pearl. So, in natural pearls, and this is a very rare occurrence, and that is why natural pearls were so expensive up to the 20th century. If an irritant gets inside a mollusk, I'm going to point now, through these valves, or perhaps bores a hole into it, to smooth out that discomfort, the mollusk coats the irritant with a nacre, that whitish iridescence that we have now known to be calling pearl. So they give it thousands of coating, and depending on where the irritant is located within the mollusk, a pearl is formed. The location of the irritant determines whether it's going to be a perfectly round pearl, very rare, or a baroque pearl, which is misshapen, not perfectly round. It truly is. Its formation is a nature's lottery, let alone the shape of it. So, pearlfish, translucent, small, and these are ocean dwelling fishes, are often found in tropical waters and are known to swim inside clams and oysters to hide from predators. In one particular case, the oyster viewed it as an irritant and made it into a fish shaped pearl. So, cultured pearl follows the same process, except for a deliberately introduction of the irritant into the oyster. So, contrary to popular belief, a grain of sand will not result in a pearl because the irritant has to be organic. So, to learn about the cultured pearl process, we now go to French Polynesia, to the South Sea pearls. Tahiti is the market for them. So, the process of inserting a bit of a mantle and a bead into a pearl, which is known as grafting, is tricky work that takes some time to master. A bit of the mantle is implanted with the nucleus, usually a bit of the oyster shell because it has to be organic material, into each of several pearl oysters. And this is to help stimulate growth of a pearl. Pearls form when the oyster builds up mother of pearl, nacre, around this invasive thing that has been put into it, hence invasion. So these surgically implanted oysters are then put into a mesh basket, which will get submerged for 2 years. The baskets are hung vertically to a depth of around 20 feet, and this allows the grafted protopearls to develop into large, shiny objects of desire. The boys anchor the pearl oysters in shallow water so the fish can pick them clean. So, this is what they're looking like. And so, among some of the fish that help keep them clean are butterfly fish and Moorish idols. And these baskets also provide hiding spaces for small fish and some food in the form of encrusting organisms. On the right, these are the surgical tools that await an oyster whose mantle, once removed, will help to produce up to 30 pearls. Here is the delicacy of removing a pearl from an oyster. So, black pearls form in a very specific type of oyster, the Tahitian black lipped pink tada Margarita fera. So, Margarita actually means pearl originally. The interior shell, called a nacre, as we had said before, of most oysters, is usually glossy white or silver, but the Tahitian, I guess, black lipped oyster features a thick band of black. If the pearl forms near this band, it will suck up that black color. So Tahitian black lip pearls can be darker if they get closer to the lips and can also be silvery gray color if they get wedged in a lighter portion of the oyster. And if an oyster that typically produces white pearls has an unusual black coloring in its nacre, it can also produce a black pearl. But that is a rarity. Like I think the numbers were like 1 in 10,000. Very, very rare. But coloring matters. And these are the Stockholm papyrus, or papyrus compiled in Egypt. This would be around 300 CE, 300 current era, has 154 recipes for dyeing, coloring gemstone, and also cleaning and purifying pearls. Because sometimes unscrupulous dealers will take a cream or white pearl that is dull and worthless and introduce a chemical substance to produce a black tint. When a black pearl is scraped, the powder is white. But when an artificially colored pearl is scraped, the powder will be black as well. That's an easy way to tell if it's been messed with. So the king of the cultured pearl is the Japanese brand Mikimoto. And here's the king himself, the founder Kokichi Mikimoto. And it was introduction of his cultured pearls that devalued the $1 million necklace that Cartier had paid for that building for Robert Plant, sorry, Morton Plant, which remains the American flagship. Now that we know what they are, let's enjoy their beauty. The only reason this picture is here is because I love Edmund Dulac's work, and this is from the Kingdom of the Pearl book, beautifully illustrated. So across the globe, this is from China, dragons catching pearls in a snuff bottle. I'm going to point them out in the front. Here's that golden pearl, and in the back, right there again. So dragons denote good luck, and pearls are auspicious. The borders of this page from an early 16th century German book of the hours is illustrated with pearls hanging from fine gold chains. Pearls also are used to accentuate the quarterfoil, the trefoil, and the cross pendants. And in a book that I really tried to get a picture of, but there's nothing, there's a facsimile of it, but you can't. So if any of you can, look up the Grimani. There's a book, a manuscript Grimani. The illustrations there are just lovely. They have some of this stuff in there as well, I believe. The oddly shaped Baroque pearls, it stimulated the artist to create magnificent, funky creatures like mermaids and sirens and sea monsters and lots of Greek gods and goddesses. One of the most famous of the pearl figurines is the Canning Jewel, where a large Baroque pearl forms the torso of Triton, son of the Greek god Neptune. Pearls also affected hairstyles, pulled them up to create a striking effort, Shown here, her hair held in place by a gold network of toque-like coronal draped with pearls. And the monstrance, which is the lattice, a masterpiece of Baroque art featuring 1,485 emeralds, one sapphire, 13 rubies, 28 diamonds, 62 Baroque pearls, and 168 amethysts. It is one of the most beautiful and elaborate liturgical items made in South America, a region where gold and emerald were in abundant supply and in which the indigenous culture of South America's leading goldsmiths were alive and flourishing long before the arrival of Europeans. One of the Europeans being Christopher Columbus. His expeditions had been funded by Ferdinand and Isabel due to his storytelling the lure of unbelievable wealth in the New World. This map, so on the top is what exists now, and they did technology applied to it to see what it looked like during his time. So this is the map, the Martellus map used by Columbus. And I was amazed to realize this is what they thought that the globe looked like. Even those who knew that the world wasn't flat. I mean, look at it. I think it was a relief to him that he discovered pearls in Venezuela around 1498 because it got the king and queen off his back, and the Spanish were acquisitive just as Elizabeth. But I also want to point out, like, these maps are really important because this is the wall simular inspired by the Martellus map. Look at the perspective of the world. I mean, genuinely, look at America. Forget the North and the South. In context, the confidence with which these explorers went about the world with a map like this, it really brings to mind ignorance is bliss. Who would go out thinking this is where I'm going? And I just laughed thinking, was the cartographer bored and just filled up spaces with random islands? Let me put an island there. Looks like a good space. Anyway, well, Spain's wealth is displayed in this painting of Saint Gregory, identified by his triple papal crown right there. His sumptuous dalmatic with those large cabochons surrounded by pearls. And again, in the paintings for Saint Ambrose and Augustine, pearls, as you can guess by now, have adorned reliquaries, medals, jewelry, carpets, chasubles, taken as medicine, changed the religious composition of countries. And so our final story is actually very instructive. Franz Joseph I, the Emperor of Austria, had given his wife a beautiful pearl necklace. She preferred pearls as they were the symbol of tears, and in her latter years, she no longer attended courts, festivities, and led a life of extreme simplicity. After some time, she thought that her pearls had lost their brilliance and read that as an evil omen. She dreamt that their original beauty could be restored by leaving it for the space of a year at the bottom of the sea. So at the island of Corfu, with a lady in waiting, she dropped into the sea a casket containing the pearls. The casket was fastened with iron chains to the other end of the shore. I guess no one bothered to tell her to simply polish them and wear them because by wearing them, they regain the luster if you don't have a lot of perfume and cream on. Anyway, within a year of her doing so, she was assassinated by an Italian anarchist. And though a search was made, the chain had been severed and the jewels were never recovered. So they remain in the ocean that birthed them, along with countless untold, most likely perfect pearls that oysters routinely spit out because they do not care that the irritants are pretty. Our treasure is their trash. How very, very discerning. And so, if your schedule permits, please join us next month, July 8, where the title is Ozymandias. Based on the poem, it's really going to be about entities, cultures that existed and flourished but are no longer around. It really talks about the ephemerality of all our lives. And a note had been sent to most of you that the University of Chicago alumni community has asked us. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share the stories of the work of the children of all ages of the Nourishment Project. This is what your membership supports. So if you have the time, please join us. It's an online presentation, but I believe you do have to register. It's free, but if you're up on Saturday morning, I hope you consider it. And as always, I am grateful for your time and I wish you joy. I'm going to stop sharing now. Ta-da. I don't know. How was it? Let me see. Could you please unmute yourself? Is there a question?
Shoma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Shoma, Jack Andrews in London.
Yes.
I loved your quote, Mrs. Fisher, from the Consider the Oyster.
Yes.
And I reached for my own copy of that book, and on the back, and I'm reading it, if I may, just two sentences.
Yes, please do.
A very good late cookery writer here called Jane Grigson, when she read Mrs. Fisher, she wrote this, and I think I would equally want to write this about you. It's only two sentences. She says, she makes you laugh, tells you stories, intrigues your mind, and gives you an appetite, takes you on her travels, and is witty, wise, and unpretentious. Thank you very much.
Oh, Jack. Was she in love with you too?
I wish.
Oh, thank you, Jack. Oh, that means a lot. I should just end it all right now. But how do you top that? Oh, that makes me so happy. Yes.
I have a question. It's Bobby.
Bobby, hi, Bobby.
Hi, I didn't turn on my video. Why in the East are Baroque pearls so treasured, but in the US, they are not? So you don't know about that.
I don't know.
Okay, I would call many of those Indian pearls that are worn, they're not perfectly shaped, are they?
No, but you know, I'm just speaking as an Indian, and let me speak for Indian people. Sometimes I think perfection is boring. The difference in all of life, what you call imperfect is what makes it so much more interesting. And if you can fit it into a bigger picture, that's what lends it beauty. I mean, barring what Jack said, I am hugely imperfect, but you have the grace of accepting me as I am with my pronunciations and my misspeaking and all of it. It makes it much more fun. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a cultural thing. Who knows? I don't really know. Does anybody else? Can anybody else?
Does anybody else think
address
that way
that?
or raise that way to feel that Americans like everything matching?
Well, all I can do is to link it to the stones in the precious stones like rubies and diamonds and emeralds that were in some of the Indian jewelry were not that sharp cut of English.
The cabochons, they were really not cut at all. Yes.
It seems to me when I asked about that, the person who, I don't remember where it was, I just remember was that it was the sort of celebration of the natural beauty of the stone, as opposed to looking for something that was, man created for brilliance. And I don't know if that's consistent with taking the beautiful pearl as it comes, not looking for a perfect sphere.
Well, I can tell you, having been in the diamond business for a while, even with diamonds, the cut that we know today is less than 100 years old. They, up until then, were simply done by hand with an eye, but no particular plan. And each person who did a stone did it according to his interpretation of what was going to be the most beautiful. So you could also see in one of the pieces, I think it was the carpet, where there were diamonds in the center of the rondelle. They're basically uncut. They're like chips, fragments that were not done in this way. Today, people who want to complete, let's say, 19th century diamond jewelry where something is missing, they're extremely rare. It's extremely difficult now to find such things because they've all been cut by machine
Faceted,
according to a
yeah.
particular, by hand, but with a knowledge of what gives the most refraction from inside the diamond when the light strikes it.
And then I'll just say, I'm sure you've spoken before about the Japanese concept of I think it's called wabi sabi,
Yes.
the idea of incompletion and imperfection and not understanding something in its totality, and also maybe not tempting the gods by attempting to create something that's perfect. There's always this little bit of imperfection that lends a certain aspect that they appreciate. Maybe that explains the Baroque pearls versus the perfect pearls. I don't know.
One thing that I can contribute, actually, that's a great point, the wabi sabi aspect, but I know for sure, since we were talking carpets, the Islamic carpets, they deliberately added mistakes on their design because to them, the only perfection, and I think, Bobby, this might address what you're asking, the only perfection to them is Allah. That concept is also true in the Native American culture here in the Southwest. They will always incorporate a mistake in there. Therein lies their love, that you will always be higher than me. I will strive my best, but you're always better. That in that imperfection lies love. And I think that's sublime. I love being wrong. I deliberately lose games to my children. Well, I used to lose them before deliberately. Now I just lose because they're better than me in chess. But in the beginning, I used to lose all the time. And it gave me such joy to see my son's cheek just grinning year to year. Now I'm practically weeping. I'm probably out in 5 minutes. So, oh, look at your doggy. Pauline. A beauty. Is that a setter?
She's muted.
It's a Springer Spaniel,
Oh, it's a spaniel.
English Springer Spaniel.
Ah, beautiful.
We had a cockamamie.
Anything else from anyone?
Baroque pearls were very popular in this country from 1900 through the 1920s. And when I needed a Baroque pearl adjustment to my seed pearl necklace, I went to my jeweler back in the Middle Ages when I had a jeweler, and they found in the back of their safe an old cigar box that was filled with Baroque pearls from the Missouri River. And so we found Baroque pearls that fit what I needed to have done. And they moseyed around in the box and created a pair of Baroque pearl earrings for me. So,
Lucky you.
and I inherited Baroque pearls from an aunt.
Oh,
So
wow.
they were stick pins. So this is, they're still around. And my granddaughters will get my Baroque pearls.
How lovely. Oh. Is that it then? Is there anything else from anyone? I'm so happy you're here. I hope you enjoyed the story because I had fun doing it. Did you like that pig with the pearls? I thought that was the best picture ever. I loved it. I practically did the thing because of that pig. I was like, oh, must do something.
It's a great image. Yes.
Yeah, quite the beauty. Miss Chambers,
Well,
what did you think? Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Looks like
I
a
just
Vietnamese pig.
wanted to know that without having spoken to Lisa yet, that you've improved my marriage, because if imperfection is called interesting, I'm an extremely interesting person. So
Here, here.
I'm glad to nourish your marriage, William. 50 more years.
absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is that it then?
The
all
event
right?
is tomorrow night. Is that what you're saying?
The event is tomorrow night.
Could we all give them a round of applause? It's their 50th anniversary, and I'm so 60th. Sorry, I'm out of it. 60th anniversary, isn't that?
And her 80th birthday.
Yes, but I wanted to be careful without mentioning all of that. So happy birthday to you.
Thank
It's a
you.
delight. I wish you extra slices of cake.
Well,
Have one on my behalf.
I've always loved older women. So
Ah, yeah. Enjoy your birthday and congratulations on your anniversary.
Very much.
thank you, Shoma.
Love the
Please
lecture.
do.
It was just
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you, Lisa. I'm so happy you attend. I'm grateful that everyone attends. Please take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.